Welcome to on this show, we choose a topic that's interesting to us and then assemble a panel of experts or people with unique perspectives to discuss the topic of the week. This week's topic is tabletop RPGs. We're going to talk about our favorite game to play, some of our favorite stories, and we'll share some tips for players and DMs. I'm your host, Scott, and joining me this week.
Hey, I'm Shannon Perkins.
I am Tim Perkins.
Eric Stevenson here.
And I'm Jimmy Yamaguchi.
Okay, and to give a little bit of background, I don't think we've all played tabletop games together, but we've all had some sort of mix of playing different games together with us. If you watched our Free Comic Book Day online stream, Eric and I played Dadlands. I'm playing a Fandelver with Tim and Shannon right now. Playing Ghost of Saltmarsh with Eric also at the moment during quarantine, and Jim and I have not been playing anything yet, but we probably would. But we've known each other for quite some time.
Yeah.
We just haven't been able to schedule campaigns together because, as an adult, it's a little bit tricky to do. But I guess I'll start off with my background. In high school, third edition of Dungeons and Dragons came out, and then that's what my friends and I would play. Like, we'd each, because books are like $50 a pop, and we were in high school, someone bought a DM's Dungeon Master Guide, someone bought a Player's Handbook, someone bought a Monster Manual, and then we all just kind of shared. But we would get together every Friday night, and then usually we would spend the night at whoever's house and keep playing the next day. But so I kind of fell off. I didn't play any 4th edition. I started doing 5th with the new campaigns we've been playing, and I kind of really like 5th. It reminds me of 3rd a lot. There's just you get a couple extra abilities and things. But yeah, if you guys want to talk about some of your favorite tabletop games to play or run, I'll throw the floor over to y'all.
I'll go.
Okay.
All right. D&D obviously is kind of what I started with, but I started with 2nd edition, and the rules for 2nd edition were so complicated.
Fako, anyone?
Oh,
yeah.
God.
All right. To be fair, I did learn on AD&D. I played one game of that, and then we played 3rd edition. So to me, it doesn't count. But I have played 2nd edition games as well.
It was really hard. My first character that I ever made was in the Dark Sun setting. It was a mull. For those of you that don't know what a mull is, it's a dwarf human hybrid. A mull earth cleric who died, I think by the 3rd session, and I was dead. Because Dark Sun is ruthless.
It is.
Don't have water, you're dead. Yeah, that's how I started. And then I actually got to play from 2nd edition all the way through each one. 3rd, I played a little bit, not too much. But then 4th, I played a lot with Shannon and Tim and that crew. And then we moved on to 5th later.
I'll throw in, I started end of 1st edition, beginning of 2nd edition for D&D, and played that a little bit with Jim, and I went to high school together and everything. So we would play in middle school and high school. And then high school, I got into World of Darkness and did 4 years playing different vampire campaigns and Mummy and Changeling. And then I stopped because I had a child. So that went on hiatus for a little while. And then everyone from high school kind of got back together, and all of them come to my house. So we got back into 4th edition, and then also playing Star Wars and some other fun one-pagers and different things at the house.
Nice.
So been playing forever. Probably 29, 30 years.
Yeah.
Tim, you want to go next, and I'll take up the caboose?
Sure. I am likely the resident noob. I started with 4th edition.
Wow.
People ask me why I continued. The answer is Jim was actually my DM. And we played that campaign for 7 years.
Yeah, it was a long campaign. It was a long campaign.
And this is when Tim and I were working together at the store.
Yes.
And because he needed off to play it, I had to work, so we were never able to actually play D&D together until
Ouch.
the quarantine.
Yes, that is very true.
Uh,
But that was my first iteration. Then we moved to 5e, which we still play to this day. That's probably my go-to for tabletop. We have played Star Wars together. We've done a few one-shots, Crash Pandas, and a few other things. Some brief runs, but primarily we play in 5e just because of the groups we have.
I guess I'm the old head here. I probably I can't even really tell you when I started playing. It's been that long. It's probably been about 35 years, probably a little longer than 35 years. But I was like 9. So when did I get my first book? I don't know. I do know I started playing it very distinctly with my friend's father, running Keep on the Borderlands in the original, first edition, the old box, the original box. What's the blue box is what it's called, right? I never owned any of that material, but I did find actually that module that I guess he gave me that module when we were done playing it. I found like the old thing all marked up in pen. I wrote on the map in pen for some reason, which is something a 7-year-old or 8-year-old might do playing D&D. Yeah, I played basically everything that TSR, or at least bought everything that TSR put out in the 80s. Gamma World, Star Frontiers.
so that was a lot of stuff if you bought all of it.
Marvel Superheroes.
I have that one.
I say I have Marvel Superheroes as well. I have a ton of RPG books that I've never played.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of heroes, we did play some Savage Lands as well.
Very briefly. We tried it out for a little while.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with the Savage Lands. The last superhero system I played was Aberrant, which is White Wolf. I see Shannon's familiar with that. It's basically the D10 system. It's the same mechanics as Vampire, put into a like open world kind of a superhero camp, and not really superheroes. It's more like there's an event, kind of reminiscent of the Wild Cards. If anyone's familiar with the George R.R. Martin Wild Cards, kind of the dark, edgy, kind of, but more realistic hero campaign. That was actually my friend Sean read a really good campaign with that. It was very very bizarre. Started out with a really great idea, and it just kind of went off the rails. But it was like,
goes.
To do, yeah.
Instead of making like rolling for your abilities and doing all that at the beginning of the campaign, we just kind of made ordinary people. And then we acquired things happened to us, and we were thrust into strange situations. It was kind of like a Twilight Zone episode type thing, or like Lost before that went off the rails. But definitely of all those, I would have to say D&D remains the stalwart. And I played that off and on in various dribs and drabs through since 1983 or so. I stopped for a little bit at the end of high school, played 3rd edition a little bit in college, skipped 4th edition entirely, went back and did a little 3 and 3.5, played Pathfinder. I have a friend who has this massive board game collection, and we've played everything from Scythe and some of the stuff set in like Forgotten Realms. It's like Descent is one of them. There's Lords of Waterdeep. I think that's the game.
That one's fun.
Yes. Yeah. We like my regular in-person gaming group. We would bounce back and forth between doing campaigns, and sometimes we'd be like, let's not do campaigns. Let's do a board game of the week. And we would play Star Trek, DC Heroes, Cthulhu 5000, Bears versus Babies. The list just goes on. But really, definitely D&D is the one thing, like the one constant throughout. And it's definitely a name everyone knows. A system that I think is easy. The 5th edition is really easy to pick up. I think they did a really good job with the 5th edition. I know there's always like pushback and people who still pine for things like Thaco and like, I want to put my proficiency points, skill points in swimming versus climbing. I'm like,
Oh my god, I hate THAC0 so much. It's so needlessly confusing. To go on your point there, I think the system they have in D&D is extremely flexible.
Yeah.
And it can kind of, there's, no matter what situation you that arises in it, there's a tool there that can cover it.
The big thing is they're actually pretty straightforward as well.
Yeah.
Like if you want to swim, you roll an athletics check because you're swimming.
Yeah.
Like it's easy enough for a group of people to pick up and play, no matter how long or how new they are to the series.
Yeah. And I will say, if you're new and you just look at the books, like it looks super overwhelming.
It does.
You're not going to use most of that. Like 90% of that book.
Yeah, that's very true.
For your character, like only a very specific chapter, and then depending on how you want to play them, like you don't even need to pay attention to half of it.
The other good thing is there's a lot of really specific rules for characters, but Wizards has been great about Chris Perkins and a few other people being like, hey, here is the answer to this question. Like they post regularly whenever somebody tweets them a question or they get a regular question.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, Wizards of the Coast is pretty good. Yeah. Like they used to do this with the Wizard magazine, but they kind of do like software patches for their games. It's like, well, here's kind of how this rule works now, like every once in a while. Yeah. Which is kind of what they did with 3rd edition. They kind of needed to restructure a lot of it, and that's where 3.5 comes from. But I never played that. Because we could only afford so many books. So we already had the 3rd edition one, so it didn't make sense to buy another new set of books.
3.5 was good, and that's why Pathfinder was created, because they found a system that was strong and solid. And they said, you know what? Because of the open gaming license, we can do this and do it our way. Still, pay, credit to Dungeons and Dragons. But then Pathfinder came out, and Pathfinder exploded. Yeah. They had so many books that they put out and made so much, I'm assuming, money from it, that they were like, became an entity of itself, almost where there was you're either a D&D camp sort of person or you were a Pathfinder camp sort of person. I mean, there are people that play both, obviously, but it was weird. I saw a lot of people butting heads over whether D&D or Pathfinder should be the one to play, especially for a new person.
Yeah, that's kind of an old thing. The edition wars has been raging, for decades now. So and I could definitely see, and I haven't really gotten into that community too much, but I could see how there'd be that rift between the Pathfinder crowd and the D&D crowd. I think I've only really played one serious long-term Pathfinder campaign. We were all goblins. We were goblin refugees. Our village was overrun by humans, and so we had to reestablish a new civilization. Yeah, a great concept, but
neat concept.
Really, really neat concept, but really didn't kind of have as Scott mentioned before about Avatar, stick the landing very well. But it was cool. I like the Pathfinder system. To me, it felt a lot like third and 3.5 though. Yeah.
It's hard though. If you invest a lot of money, I mean, in any of these systems, it's like, all right, now I'm 5 books in. This is my pony.
Yeah. There's that too. It's the same. Like I've always said, like nerds aren't happy unless they have something to complain about. But it makes sense, like in terms of like that's where like the console wars come from. Where this thing costs you like $600. It's like, well, I'm gonna have to support it. This is, like you said, this is the horse I've backed now.
Yeah, my team.
Yep.
Whereas like Marvel versus DC, it's a little bit easier to kind of just do both because comics are like $4 a pop, versus like $50 for a book like that. But so that's one of the trouble. Like the big thing though, more important than even like what game you start off in, if you're a new player and you want to start, is to find the right group. And I can't. Yeah, like you need to find people that like have especially because we're all old now. So people that have the same time schedule like for you and can do the same kind of time commitment, and B, like have kind of similar personalities and play styles like to what you want to do. Because some people get really into like lore and like want to like get really into the role playing part. Some people really are more into the combat. Some people take things a little bit more like loosey-goosey with the rules. So if you get hung up on certain things, you got to try to find the right group. And it's one of those things you're going to have to just like learn by doing. But fortunately, we live in the internet age now where, like I said, we've been doing it over Skype and Google Hangouts and stuff because of the quarantine. But it's really easy to get a group together now because we don't have to travel anywhere and like spend a whole night somewhere. We can take a couple hours at home, roll some dice, and have some fun.
Yeah.
But like, there's lots of tools online with different message boards and things to help find groups and things. But yeah, that's the number one thing I think you need to get right.
It's definitely part of it. I think from at least our experience with our group, because we've been playing together for so long, we all kind of know the expectation of the people playing. We have some people who just want to go out and murder things, and we have some people that really enjoy the role play aspect, and we have some people that want to do a good combination of both. So it's kind of important to make sure that everyone in the party is having a good time. And also everyone in the party is getting their chance to shine, whether it be through combat, through that witty quip, or through that expertise of unlocking or whatever that action may be.
Yeah, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
My number one DM rule when I'm playing DM is make sure I'm doing my job correctly if my players are having fun, whatever that necessarily means for that group. Which is why, like, when Eric and I played Dadlands, I thought that was a fun one to run, because all I really did was set up scenarios and let you guys, and that one's a really silly world, but like let you guys kind of figure out what you want to do there, and then just try to support your actions and how your die rolls and whatnot worked out for it. Which is, I will say, if you are looking to eventually DM, definitely play as a player for a while.
I agree.
Yeah.
Experience it first.
Yeah, it's good to know it from that end, A, and B, it's good to kind of get more of a grasp on general rules and kind of like what you would expect as a player you can kind of provide for people. It's really hard to just jump in as a DM. I'm sure there's somebody that's like a DM prodigy and like is first thing like knocked it out of the park right out of the bat. But I definitely think it helps when you know the player side of it.
I don't think anybody's ever that I've ever really known has tried just jumping in and DMing. I think every player eventually says, well, let me try DMing. And usually in a lot of circumstances, like I'll be the one teaching the players, introducing a lot of the elements to them. So I see a DM role is often very much like the role of a teacher. And that kind of idea is, making sure everyone's engaged, making sure everyone's, into what you're doing. It's challenging though.
Yeah. The idea would be, at least in my head, the idea would be you're kind of the guide,
right,
leading them through their story. So.
Yeah, it's a basic kind of like the simple, like, you describe the world, the players make decisions based on your description, you describe the results. That's introducing the game to anybody new. I tell them it's just all the game is those three things. All those 330 other pages, we'll get to those when we need to get to those. But if you can just understand that you have one person who's going to describe the world, the players are going to interact with the world, and then I'll tell you the results. You get that concept, you're good to go.
I'll tell you what die to roll and when,
Yeah, exactly.
I've had people like have no idea. They knew what Dungeons and Dragons was, of course, but then they're like, how do you play? What exactly is it? The way I explain it is like, do you know when you were a kid and you used to be outside and you'd pick up a stick and pretend it was a sword? Yes. You're playing pretend again, but with rules this time. So there is no argument on who hit who. This time there's math that tells you whether you did.
I got that exact speech before I started.
Yeah, that is definitely a great way to describe it as well. But it's funny too, because even thinking about those games we used to play as a kid, we would always come up with rules on the spot too, and sometimes there were like a whole list of rules.
I'll be honest, in playing some games, and especially I mostly DM'd in high school when you're a stupid kid, but like we definitely Calvin balled a lot of stuff as things cropped up every once in a while.
House ruling is kind of required, no matter what rendition.
Yeah.
It's house rule. If you're the DM, you are the house. When you're a kid, if y'all are sleeping over my house, it's my rules.
Exactly.
But we just didn't have the term DM for your title.
But I will say that in my experience, is almost always the one person in the group who's kind of the rules lawyer. He'll pop up and be like, he knows exactly what page to go to and put things out, which can be useful, but sometimes, depending on the person, can also be really annoying. I will say, if you are more that personality, just be aware that you're like that, and just kind of temper expectations. It's like in life, just communication is key, just no matter what you're doing, because you're all there to have fun. And if someone's making the group not fun, like that's everyone's night off, like kind of ruined.
The DM at some point can kind of be like, after the game, be like, hey, just to let you know, that wastes a lot of time. I'm going to make a call next time, and then we're going to move on and address it later. And we've done that countless times. Like, it's this way right now. We'll figure it out when we're done.
We've done that a lot. There have been instances where we both weren't sure. And I was like, you know what? I'm the DM. You're the player. You want this to happen? And I'm like, I'm not sure if it should happen. So the two of us roll a dice, and whoever gets higher, that's the rule we go with.
So rock, scissors, paper.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Our group, I feel like we should mention, is giant.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, because we
like they're really tall, or they're just a lot of you.
Oh, we're massive. Like,
there's 10 to 12 of us that play weekly.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, and it just happened.
It's a mess.
Some of us started, no one ever stopped coming because I feed people. And then we had new people come and they wanted to learn, and then they don't leave either. So like our group is really big, and we've got 4 DMs in it. So a lot of times we just kind of are like, one person's DMing, but it's like if something comes up and it's like, oh, I don't know. What did we think as a group? And usually one person will be like, actually, I do know that rule. And then it's like you just keep it flowing. So as long as the rule person who knows, you're going to call on them.
Yeah, getting flow of a play session is usually really important, because you don't want to waste too much time on things that. But like some things you may not think is important. You might be more of the action kind of player, but you might be in a group of people that are really into the RPG part. So you might think you're being bogged down like by doing character things and talking to people and doing stuff, and maybe that just isn't the campaign for you.
It would definitely pull you out of a situation. I have a situation that immediately comes to mind with a group of nobles in Jim's campaign, and I got the idea to do something silly. And we immediately went into, what about this rule? I feel like this isn't how this goes, because I cast Dispel Magic. And he was like, nah, doesn't work. So I went up here and I was like, no, this has to work. This is how it is. And he just went, no, doesn't work. Moving on. And I realized after the fact that is the best way to do it, because the whole situation was tense. Everyone was caught up in the story. It was a pivotal point in this story. Everyone was engaged. And me arguing about the rule at that given time would have stopped everything. So sometimes it's easier to just be like, let's keep this going no matter what happens, no matter what rule we decide on.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to stop that.
And that's something that Tim, to highlight what you did there. I mean, you, instead of getting your back up, instead of getting angry at Jim, players have to remember that sometimes the DM's gonna call something, you're not gonna be happy about it, but you're just gonna have to go with it and sacrifice your little part for the greater good of the story. And I think players have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it was I messaged him after when we were done, and I was like, that wouldn't work that way. But
yeah,
during the
Yeah.
actual thing, I was like, I'm gonna let it go.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you can, as a DM or as a player, like, don't really try to fight each other like about this kind of stuff. It's one thing if you're in character and like you start to do like a Captain America Civil War situation where you don't agree on the way to go. Like that's a different kind of fight. But like, don't really just stop and just attack each other on rules and things.
To,
That's
to give
not
some
fun,
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, to give some background, it was like it was hour 3-ish of a 4 or 5 hour session, I think.
Was it that long?
Yeah, it was a typical Monday, and we were meeting at like 6, and we would go till like 11.
We were in
So
the
it
old.
was like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was like hour 3 of 4. We had spent the entire 3 hours trying to do one thing and convince one person to come to our side, and I threw it away in that. So I had this gut feeling to immediately argue whatever would have happened, because I was like, I just screwed up everything. So.
Oh, and I can speak from experience where like I sometimes have like, oh, here's a great idea on how to deal with this. All right, and then I get to clear from the because I'll have something weird happen. Like, oh, I want to bash a shield and throw this thing. So that way I can hit like 2 guys at once. And then just completely whiff the rolls. And I spent all this time like trying to figure out how to do this thing and like being like, oh, all this cool action I want to do, and just like, nope, you dropped whatever, you fell over.
Yep.
Like, oh, never mind.
It was a great idea though, Scott. It really was. It would have been an awesome move.
That move specifically did happen a couple of weeks ago.
But and I think that's maybe one of the other maybe one of the early misconceptions, and I know this is kind of almost how we played the game in the 80s, that the DM is not opposed to the players. It's not an adversarial relationship.
That's important.
Yeah,
and
it's extremely collaborative. Yeah.
And I know when we were young and 9 and 10, it was always, basically, all right, the DM would roll out an army of liches and we would roll out our army of +5 Vorpal swords. And, it was just a die rolling free for all. But, that's really not the game. It's, like you said, collaborative.
Well, and for us, like I've played in games where I know the DM is trying to kill us. He thinks it's funny.
Oh yeah, those are the worst.
Yeah, it's amazing that the adults will still do that.
Or I've played in games where people have a story they're telling, and they're going to make sure you tell their story because they've put so much of their heart into it. And again, it's good when you have a group. You can do that with a group of people as opposed to like brand new people that you're just playing with for the first time, because at least we can be like, all right, I love you. I know why you're doing this. I will play your story. And maybe I'll mess with you every now and then because now it's fun for me. But like, you understand what each person is doing. But again, it's those conversations that can kind of happen up front or for the session. You can be like, hey, I feel like you hate my character. What did I do? And then they can be like, oh no, I just really want to kill all of you. And it's like, cool. Now I know.
I will say, I feel like those are 2 pitfalls that people, especially young people who are first getting into the game, fall into. You get really wrapped up in the creative control you have of setting up this world and all these things, that you forget that the players are your main characters and you don't control what they do. You basically, no matter what you do it, you react to what they do. You can set up all this stuff. You can set up this super intricate dungeon, but like if they're not going to go in it, they're not going to go in it. And players tend to be really resistant to like the railroading onto the story. And 2, like, a lot of people, like I used to do when I flip through a monster, I'm like, oh, this monster's awesome. I want to play it, but it doesn't always work out. Like, if you have level 5 people and you throw a juggernaut at them, it doesn't really work like that, especially if we start going through like the demons and things. I'm like, ooh, these ones are really cool. I want to use them.
You fight a Tarrasque. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is something to look out for, especially if you're younger. Like I think that's, and not just younger age-wise, but like younger into, you're like newer to doing this stuff.
Even some supplemental stuff. I use Dungeon in a Box because we play 2 and 3 times a week, and I don't have the kind of time to plan out campaigns for 2 and 3 times a week.
And there's no shame in that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll use Dungeon in a Box, which is a very helpful tool for if you want to just start practicing with a DM. They send you a box. It's a whole bunch of stuff in it. It's a great product. But
Hopefully they sponsor us.
Yeah.
They might now.
It's a linear story. And I warned people before we started, this is their story that they're giving me that I'm telling to you. So you have that expectation now where I'm going to let you free flow and we'll figure it out as we go. But there is a set story that they are giving me that only has so much ebb and flow available.
And I will say, for both players and DMs, like players talk about your character idea and like your like maybe a little bit of your backstory and motivations with your DM, because they'll start working, even if you're going from a pre-planned thing like that.
Yes.
There's lots of ways you can start working that naturally into the story. And it'll be so much more rewarding for both you and your players. Like in Phandelver, we're playing now. The cat's out of the bag now, but I was playing a secret rogue. My character on paper was a bard, but he uses that as a cover to travel from town to town because he's a thief. So that's kind of like, I can kind of get people drunk and get information from them. I'm very. I try to come up with ways to get to not have combat. Unfortunately, with our group, what's Pete playing, like a combat cleric? So it's kind of hard not to.
War cleric.
War cleric.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to. He kind of pulls us into the fight no matter what. But that's been kind of fun to play, and I was keeping that secret. But I taught, Shannon's running that, and it's not pre-programmed, but it's a pre-packaged campaign. But like we're able to kind of play with that, where like my character has a history with some of the NPCs in it. But as I was doing like secret sneak attacks and stuff, I was just kind of sending her text messages, which was fun. But that became more trouble.
It was good until we got into quarantine.
Yeah, well, it was harder to do that over Zoom because all of a sudden there's like a really long gap. With like talking to each other, so super noticeable that things were happening. It was kind of screwing up the flow of gameplay. So I just kind of was like, well, I've been playing a rogue this whole time. Just act like I'm still a bard.
Well, and like as the DM on that, which was when we were in person, I could have my phone in front of me. We could text back and forth, and he'd be like, dude, what's in that? I rolled this for stealth. I rolled this for sleight of hand. I want to steal it before they notice. And I could look down at my phone real quick and be like, oh, okay, cool. Scott did that. And I could just text him back and be like, you got a jade elephant, whatever.
And it worked out nicely because we're using D&D Beyond. So my character sheets, it's all on the phone. So it makes sense that I'm looking at it. And you can do digital dice rolls. So I can just kind of hit the button, get my result. And like not, because I'm just rolling dice. Like people might be like either really annoyed by that or might be suspicious.
Sneaky.
But
we used to have to pass notes.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing.
Yeah. So that was fun to do, but like it's in terms of like just getting things done, it being out in the open is not too bad. So that way it's not super weird that I'm like opening all the locks to everything. But with our group, it kind of also makes sense. Like I have the most dexterity and like those kinds of things.
I always try to tell people when they're making a character, pick one thing. I don't care what it is. You can pick that you want to be a certain race, a certain class. You can pick a background story thing. You can tell me, oh my God, I read a random book and a character did this and I want to be that person. Whatever the one thing is so that you can remember it.
Yeah, and if you want to just be an archetype, that's
character fine. And you do whatever you want with it. But at least know that you have one thing that like that was your goal. And then let's expand upon it. Let's now teach you the other things.
Yeah.
Or
it encourages you to start thinking about that character.
And like, I would always recommend like don't have your character's backstory so planned out, or leave a lot of gaps because there's going to be lots of opportunity to fill in things in natural ways and ways that you may even still not expect. Like a character that you're partying with may have been the person that killed your parents. That sets you on your quest to become, a rogue Batman type character. And you may not even realize it, and they may not even realize it. But if your DM can kind of put those together in the background, it can be a really fun and really cool moment at the table for your group. And it might completely change how you like look at each other and you play the game, and it's really cool. And I will say, one of my personal rules as DM, I will to encourage role play. Because I understand not everyone's like into that part of it as much, but I never punish people for not doing it. But I will reward you for doing it. I'll either maybe give you some small like XP bonuses, or like you might get a little bit more gold, depending on what your situation is. It's usually XP because that's kind of the best thing to do.
Inspiration.
Well, now inspiration's a thing. I haven't run a 5th edition campaign yet. Which inspiration is a fun mechanic because you can also give it to, if you have it, you can give it to somebody else in your party.
Yes.
So it's a nice collaborative thing you can do. That's one of my recommendations. It's definitely trying to get too locked into your character. I mean, own your character, but
right.
You want to be able to have them have the ability to grow. And it's fantastic if you have this character concept and you want to go write this glorious backstory behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create a 4, 5, 6 page backstory, you have no room to grow. And half the fun of it is literally either figuring it out as you go or making it up on the spot. Or like you said, the person that hired you is the person that killed your parents. Now you have this wonderful revenge story that you could do that would have never happened if you had it all pre-planned out before.
And here's a DM trick along those lines: is if the character has some sort of mysterious past like that, that's a really easy way to like kind of hide your story hook, to get them to kind of, if they're not going on the adventure, be like, oh, maybe I heard it was the 6-armed man or the 6-fingered man or whatever it is. Like, now I can kind of, now you have a character motivation to go rather than a metagame like, well, you do this or we don't play a game tonight. Because that makes it a little bit more fun. Because there's a trope called don't get on the boat. Because whenever you have to get on a boat, the DM always has like some sort of crazy, horrible thing that's going to happen to you. So players are always really resistant of that kind of stuff.
Definitely no Krakens. It'll be fine. Get on the boat.
Everything's fine.
Everybody always starts on a boat. That way you have no choice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
You just woke up on the boat. Why are you here? Like now you have to get off, Yeah,
I like that. That's another fun way of getting, players together in a campaign is you can do you're all in jail together, or you're all on a trip together, or you just happen to be in the same caravan together.
It doesn't matter what it is. Steal something from them. Someone could steal their boots.
They'll chase you down forever.
It will be the only motivation these characters have for like probably years if you can play it right. It's
the culmination of the campaign is finally getting
my hat.
But it sounds silly, but steal $5 from a player and they will do whatever you start to tell them to do. Because that's
this is like the plot of Citizen Kane, right? Rosebud, there it is.
Rosebud, like it's good to have a little bit of mystery in your players. And as a DM, try not to overshare too much stuff. One of my favorite things with DM, all right, so say you roll to like do checks, like I want to see if there's anything in this room, or like I'm checking to see if there's anything in like this dark cave. If they roll and they successfully see to successfully see if they see something, don't tell them they see nothing. Like, you don't see anything. There's nothing here that you can see. Because that's going to put it in their head, like, it adds a mystery to it. Like, if you just say, like, there's nothing here, it's A, more boring, and B, like, it kind of takes away a lot of tension from stuff. Even if you don't have any plans to have things pop out and attack them.
Yeah, I've heard people give great ideas of, like, your character is already good at what they do. So if they attempt to do it and fail, they don't necessarily fail because of their own means. Maybe it was foggy. Maybe it was just that little bit too dark to see. Something caught their attention instead. Like, don't just make it you don't see or you don't do this. Make a reason for why they wouldn't.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of flavor, and it helps expand, like, it makes you look like a better DM. Because you sound more like you know what you're doing. So do it for that reason as well. But it makes it a little bit more fun for everyone. Because when you're doing it right, like, everyone's kind of into it. Like, I know it sounds silly and stuff. like, you know, you're in like a fantasy world where, like, you know, I'm playing like a gnome princess and things
You're
like
all
that.
telling a story. That's all.
Yeah, it makes it more fun. Like, words are your tools in this. Use them. But it's going to make your world feel like a lot more real, and it kind of makes it also doesn't take away like player agency.
Yeah. I think someone started talking a little bit about this before. Well, actually, we were talking about role playing and inspiration. I think that's another hurdle for players who want to get into the game. You know, maybe they'll see, you know, some of the YouTube videos and they're like, do I have to be an actor to be a player? Do I have to do funny voices all the time? Do I have to have an accent? And you know, I always tell players that you can do first person narration, you can do third person narration, you can do summary. And you know, I think for most players, it's easier for them to get started doing third person narration, where they summarize kind of what a character says and what their attitude is. And then when they get a little more comfortable with that, then they can maybe branch out a little bit. And it's kind of what we were talking before about growing. And then you grow as a character, you grow as a player too.
One of the first things I told Jim was, I'm not doing a voice.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
It's whatever the person feels comfortable doing, just allow them to do it. If they say, I go up to the shopkeeper and haggle down the price, some people want to sit there and literally for the next 15 minutes in character haggle a price.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's another thing too. Like, because you can just roll to like intimidate and do that kind of, or persuade. Yeah, you can do that to make sure that the other the NPC or whatever kind of buys it. But like, definitely, if you don't get into your character or speak as your character, definitely explain what you're like what your character do. Don't just roll, because again, that's not as much fun.
But as a DM, I feel like our giant group, we have players that want to role play, and we know who they are. And then we have other ones that want to summarize or describe something in a very episodic way, but they cannot tell you. Like if you said, I haggle with the person, and you turned around and said, well, what did you say?
Oh yeah. You have to feel it out.
Yeah.
So you have to know as a DM, like you build those skills in your players. You give them time. Like maybe you say to them, hey, next week, your skills are going to be useful. Maybe come up with a few things that you want to say when you go at this noble. Give them prep time to build up those skills and reward them for it, but try not to throw that person on the spot, or they're going to immediately freeze up and be like, I don't want to play right now. I don't know what I want to say. I just wanted to roll the dice and haggle. Yeah. So like you can do both, and you just have to know the people around you and watch them as they play and see where they need you to provide a scaffold for the learning.
Yeah.
And where they can be like, all right, I know you're going to haggle. So when I go to you, I'm going to say, oh, you're talking to the noble, you're intimidating. What are you saying? I know you got words.
Feeling comfortable is a big part.
Right.
Like essentially. Yeah. And that's, I came to you like, I'm not doing voices. And now I try and do stupid voices all the time.
It's fantastic.
And I think that's kind of, it's kind of a comfort thing. As you get used to this and see how much it can affect the story, you start to realize that maybe it's a good idea to at least describe things better or paint a picture. Or
no voices here.
You don't necessarily, you don't need to do voices, but give a background of what's happening and why.
I will say, even if you attempt to do a voice, and like none of us are actors, it doesn't have to be good.
Jim is.
But like,
Jim.
Well,
none of us are actors. Jim.
Jim's a voice actor.
Yeah.
Well, all right, not counting Jim. None of us are really thespians, but like doing character voices like actually really does kind of help put you in the mind of the character, and it does really help facilitate a lot of the role playing. And I think I try to do character voices, but I usually kind of just default to my own. But it helps like you like talk out of character and in character a little bit. It makes it a little bit less confusing because you can talk to your fellow players and like, well, here's kind of an idea of a plan, but not necessarily like something your character, or like you can say things that your character wouldn't know, or like remind someone that their character might know this without.
Yeah. It does help to separate the two lines a little bit because
the in-game and out of game. Yeah.
because we have regular conversations with friends as we're talking and people are playing, and then you're like, oh, I want to do this, and you're like, well, are you saying that to this guy over here, or are you saying it to the DM? What?
Yeah, it's just in-game or out-of-game.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, the DM's got to step in and referee a little bit there. Like, you just said something ridiculous. Are you actually doing that? I can't tell you how many times I've said that in my life.
Well, what's nice about doing it over Zoom and whatnot is you can kind of just mute people in case you need, like, you got to stop talking real quick. Because I'm just as bad as anyone. But, like, everyone's got their little jokey, quick, quips and things. Sometimes it's really annoying.
Yes. Everybody's got stand up, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all got to work on our tight five,
Yeah.
For those of you that are new players, and you want to try a voice, it doesn't have to be this, crazy epic voice. And you'll see all the people on YouTube are like the voice actors, or they pull in celebrity. You don't have to emulate what they're doing. You could just do a little wispy thing, and then people will know that you are different than when you're just like, hey, can you pass me the chips, please? Sort of thing.
Yeah, you're setting a different tone, and it makes it a little bit easier to tell.
Oh, sorry.
I think I do. I'm started a new character, the second or third session playing, and it's just it's a Dragonborn Paladin. He just speaks in kind of very serious, short clip sentences like this. Very stoic type, so kind of the opposite of me. So just like you said, Jim, just simple things like that. I think
it helps everybody.
Yeah, and it also enforces that character's personality, and it's a simple role playing thing that doesn't take any acting skill at all, really.
See, I'm trying to do a Jason Statham thing with my barbarian character. We're playing in Fantasy Grounds for that campaign, and my character profile is a picture of him. So I'm just imagining like him scaled down. But that character specifically doesn't talk a lot. He's really, really antisocial because, my charisma is a 5 in that as well. So it kind of plays into that mechanically. See, in that one, we rolled for our stats. And the campaign I'm playing with you guys, we just did the standard spread.
Yeah,
right.
Rolling can be punishing, man, or broken, depending on how it goes.
Yeah, that's where like the DM kind of has to step in sometimes. It's like, you got 20s for 4 of these. You need to re-roll them.
Yeah.
Or like someone's like, I clearly rolled like terribly, and I've got like this enfeebled, like essentially like I'm rolling a skeleton man. Like you can kind of fudge it a little bit. Oh, and that's where like DM screens and stuff are great. Because again, my number one rule is if the players are having fun, I'm doing my job. Whereas like, oh, this character I rolled in, like these characters would all like have a total party kill like immediately. I'm like, I won't do that. But if a player rolls and like attacks, Asmodeus, King of the Demons, he's Devils. Sorry,
Devils.
Yeah, and just like challenges him to straight up one-on-one combat. I'm like, well, your character's dead now. Like, if it's that's where it comes down to. If it's a character decision to like do something that would cost them to die, or even if it was like a heroic moment, like they could have potentially survived, but they rolled and like it was like a self-sacrifice.
Yeah,
I will kill them, but I try. Yeah, there needs to be some stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the other day, like I got killed by a dragon. Shannon let me live. So I had 21 total hit points. This was the first time I got attacked. I got hit at all in this campaign. Hit me with a breath weapon and did 42 damage, which is literally double. Nice. That's instant character death in the rules, but we fudged it so I could come back.
Wow. Yeah, you were toasted.
But that's also your DM style as well. Like, as a DM, I am still me, and I'm a mom, and I want my players to be successful. Even when I do challenges, I can't help it. I love my players.
Yeah,
so,
I did it.
So
too.
like when we play a couple that are like ridiculous. 2 times we're going to be doing this campaign, weird one-shots. Like Tim mentioned, Crash Pandas. Literally everyone were raccoons and things, stealing cars and racing them, illegal street racing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous and incredible.
It was so much fun.
Sounds amazing.
They're from Grant Howitt. He does 1-pages where he literally like puts an entire game on a 1-page, and he has no more than 2 or 3 rules.
That's like Deadlands.
Yeah. So
I
like,
was just about to bring that up.
I
he
actually
also-
made the same person.
he also has a really big crush on Jason Statham, so he has a whole lot of like weird Fast and the Furious ones and whatnot. But like we'll do something like that, and because it's not something we're going to be playing for the next 3 years,
Right.
I can be like I want to do this, and I want this to turn into a jetpack, and I'm like, you can have a jetpack, baby. I don't mind right now. Like, let me be the mommy here. You can have whatever you can dream.
If you watch our game of Dadlands on the our YouTube page, Kendall should have died like a million times. But it wouldn't have been fun for viewers to watch. So
Was he a chaos dad?
No, you don't really. You have to have a balance between both.
Uh-oh.
But he kept pulling the wrong things, so he kept losing all of his stuff. So he never had the right things he needed to do for what he wanted. At the end of the day, he's the guy that got the remote and saved the day. So, but it was. I wouldn't kill him, but I wouldn't let him do the things he was trying to do. Like, there has to be a little bit of a balance. I will say I have an idea for a follow-up if people are interested in watching that again, or watching us do a different one. We can play different characters and have different players, but it'll be very different style game. But if that since that'll be the second one we do, I might be a little bit more harsh with those rules. Because that was my first time playing it as well.
I'm ready.
There's a good balance. You don't want to just outright be like, well, you're dead, goodbye. In like the second play, like your second session.
Especially not the first time you got hit.
Yeah, or the first time you ever get hit in a campaign. Oh, sorry, you're dead.
Sorry, I climbed up front to a dragon.
Yeah, it doesn't encourage people to keep going. But if it's a moment that really matters and it makes a statement, sometimes failing makes a statement.
Yeah.
I've had things prepared just for that moment in our long campaign that we did. I knew someone was going to die at some point, so I literally had a specific song that I would play for any time a character would die, and I had pre-written story of what happens to them as they die. So as the song is playing, when Peloth died, I had the song playing, I had the script all written out, that sort of thing. So that can help you prepare and make it meaningful, not, well, you're toast, there's your corpse on the ground.
Kendall's running his first ever D&D game right now. And in the first session they played, he made a pretty rookie mistake and let the players see the bad guy too early, where they weren't able to, there was no way they were going to be able to beat him. And I think he had a pretty good solution because they TPK'd. That's so.
It's a good story.
That's one way to solve it.
So instead of having the characters die, they woke up back in town, but the town's destroyed, and an NPC that was with them, like their head's on the spike. So like apparently like they can infer that that guy got them out, but like they lost the whole city, which works because now the characters they didn't die, but like they know how powerful this person is. So they know kind of and they know what's at stake, and now they have a personal revenge motivation. I'm like, that's a really good way to handle that, especially in the first one.
That's the thing you preach all the time, Jim. Is improvisation.
You have
to improv. And one of the best things to do in this sort of game is either say yes and or no but.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and do X. No, but there's this other option that might be good for you as well. Or maybe there's someone to help you. Or yes, but then the explosion happened and orcs come in. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And depending on don't just be a player and be like, well, I kill him. And then yes and that. But like, when someone has kind of an interesting or a move or something or a solution to your puzzle you don't expect, try not to shut it down. Again, because it also means the characters have agency and they feel like they can kind of impose what they want to do on your world too, which is a big part of why playing the game's fun. And again, to be honest, like when people have unconventional like solutions to my puzzles I didn't think of, let them think they're really smart for figuring it out, and that was your solution the whole time, because it makes you sound smart, and it makes the players have fun. Like, I solved it, and then you can take that idea that they came up with and put it in your back pocket for another campaign with someone else.
I had an entire scenario with a main boss villain that these guys completely bypassed because I didn't think of the double tap rule. Because literally they finished quote phase 1 of the guy and he's dead, and they're like, and I step on his head and I was like, well, I can't say no, so I guess you got it. And then we just moved on to the next part. That's just, it's okay if that happens.
Well, and the players don't know what you have planned. So like we've had it where, especially when I was first DMing, my players who are also DMs are like, okay, I know your goblin should only have 6 hit points, or I know lizard folk is this. Guess what?
It's sometimes hard to turn that off.
Yeah.
No, it is. But like you'd see them, like the gears turning, they're totally metagaming. They're like, okay, this. And it's like, guess what? I know you guys have done 40 damage. It's still standing. My world. Because the battle's not ready to be over. They're having fun doing it. And you can see everyone's having fun, but there's always one person that's like, I've read the monster manual.
I know this, man. Oh, wait
Why does an 18 not hit this goblin? What's happening?
Yeah. But like stuff like that, where they don't know that your main boss only had 130 hit points and somehow 3 people rolled crits and they did that much damage already.
Right.
Like they don't know it. They don't know that the room you prepared that's amazing, they didn't open the door. All right, but they opened a door 3 doors down. It's still this room.
Yeah.
You can just move it in your mind. Yeah.
You can still do these things and adjust them to what they're doing. You don't have to be like, guys, I planned a room over there and it had a puzzle. Okay, guess what? You're going to find this room in 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, just save it for another camp, like another dungeon. Just don't ever throw out ideas, especially if they don't end up getting played with that group. I think we all have had every one of us who's DM'd, who's like, we've all designed a dungeon, we've all designed a bunch of traps and puzzles and things, and like, how often do they ever play out the way we imagine?
We all have dimension
Never.
door, 300 feet, opposite direction. I miss 4 rooms. Doesn't matter. So.
And I will say, I've selfishly let my players get really powerful, kind of quick, like with magical weapons and things, just so I can pull out really big monsters to fight, because that to me sounds like more fun on my end. But this was, again, like I was like 17.
Oh, yes.
So that's
very typical.
Now as an adult, I'd rather just have a whole role-playing session where like we don't even fight anything and just kind of talk about stuff.
Me and Shan are working on co-DMing a campaign that is almost literally the exact opposite of that. Magic does not exist in the world. There are little to no magic items left. And eventually...
Hold on.
So it's a little
eventually,
like
you start to unlock those things.
So it's a little like the Game of Thrones world, where it's very low magic, but magic exists.
Right. Yes, and it starts to come back slowly as things start to happen.
But still,
my headphones on.
You can put them back on.
It's fine.
But
And
speaking,
we were looking at ways to co-DM because both of us DM very different ways. We both have skill sets that are complementary. So we've been trying to figure out what's going to make sense for us. Like, do we each take a session? Or is it like we're both at the table and maybe I'm doing characters every now and then and he's describing the world, because we still want to stay married.
Yeah.
And
would be nice.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, so don't ruin my streak here.
But like we really wanted to create something together that is a full story now, but we don't want to step on each other's toes either in the moment.
Yeah, and it actually gives us a unique opportunity to have a actual conversation instead of you changing your voice and attempting to hope that everyone around you gets the idea of what you're going for. Like, we can be 2 different people having a conversation that everyone is overhearing, as opposed to just one person kind of faking it the whole time.
Gotcha.
Those are always the most fun things, when the DM has to play a conversation with himself.
Yeah, and so, and like I would always forget, and like I would throw the accent, and like all of a sudden the king is a maiden, and I'm just like, forget it.
Forget it. An orc just busts through in the room.
Roll initiative.
You heard this. We're going.
when we get VR good enough so that everyone else can see inside my head, every character has a different voice. Unfortunately, I only have this one. But in my head, they're in different voices. I just can't recreate that for my players. So I always warn them first. I'm like, guys, this is me. This is how I talk. I'll even sometimes start with names. Like, I feel like I'm on, what was the character in Mass Effect where they would tell you like their emotion so that you'd know?
Elcor.
Yeah. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm like this. I'm like, guys, I'm the shopkeeper. Because I can't do another voice. So you find your ways, you find people that you can have fun with, and then
you'll find your niche when you DM. You'll find what you do best. You might be amazing at writing lore. You might be good at voices. You might be good at arts and crafts. And crafts in D&D can be really, really cool. If you're good at it, do it, because you can create amazing scenery for people, and people will be really, really impressed.
I've played games where the DM made the items you guys get, and that was kind of cool.
And that's actually something that I think why D&D gaming, RPGing, tabletop gaming is my favorite of all my hobbies. I do into anime and comics and movies and video games. But thing about RPG tabletop gaming is you can collect it, you can create it, you play a game with it, you interact socially with it. I don't think there's any other hobby kind of like that.
And you can play the game with nothing. You can play it with the books. You can play it with just a grid map. You can play it with a fancy 3D printed nonsense.
You can do all kinds. Yeah. It's basically your resources, your imagination, your skill level. Yeah. And whatever level you can do is what works, and what you'll find people who love that level, and that's really really there's no limit to how you can customize your experience.
And it's crazy because you can always play the same game with different people, and it's totally different. You can play the same game with the same group of people, and they're different characters. It's a totally different experience.
Completely different decisions.
Yes. Yeah. And that's when the game's at its best, when it's very organic, and it's you kind of keep everyone on their toes, and that's especially when you get a group that you guys all click with, and you're playing together, and you play together for a while, and that's the best scenario there.
Yeah.
We've been playing with our group on Monday nights for 10 or 11 years now.
That's great.
I think it's been about,
I don't know. How old was Tab?
A decade.
She was young. Yeah, she was, and now she's going to college.
Yeah, so we've been playing for a long time together, and when I even say to coworkers, they'll be like, "Oh, you have your friends come over on Monday night?" And at first, I work in a school, so at first I don't tell them we're playing D&D because they don't get it. It would take too much for me to explain. I'll be like, "Oh, we just have a game night, potluck on Monday nights." Most people are so amazed that as adults, you have a group of friends that you actually can see every week. It is a priority for all of you. I wouldn't know what to do without seeing these 10 to 12 people every week.
The quarantine's been brutal.
But then I tell people, once they get to know me, they're like, "Oh, you got your Monday night group?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we play role playing, we play D&D." And they'll be like, "So you make up stories every week?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's legit what we do.
Every single week."
Every week we get together, we eat, we have fun, and we make up stories together. And I see my friends weekly. And then, we have an every other Friday night group, which is still some of our core people from our group, but then some others. And then I do Wednesday nights here and there. We've got so many different groups of people that are still, we make the time as a priority. And I think that's something that is very different about role playing compared to other hobbies. I have friends that play video games. They always have excuses for why they forget to get together, or, you could be in a wine club or in an anime group, and people always find reasons to put it on the back burner. They don't do that with role playing. They always want to come. They need that. And you get so used to that you don't want to not do it.
Also,
Yeah.
you can only play it with other people. Like you can play video games by yourself. This is something that you can have all the books you want, but you know, if you don't have someone, at least one other person there to be the player, it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's a fun social thing. Like, even if you guys aren't great at, if you're not a great DM, you're not great players, whatever, it's still fun to get together and eat Doritos and just kind of joke around. And then, like, you know, maybe you guys get to fight a dragon. Like, you know.
Or talk your way out of shenanigans. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah. I would love, I'd have to get the right group together first, but I would love to kind of play a straight D&D campaign where you can't, the goal is to not get into combat, but I have to keep putting you in situations where that's the easy solution. But that would have to be a group that really wants to like commit to that.
Yeah, it's hard, man. People
and
fall into the I stab it.
And don't get me wrong, like, so that's kind of more my character in your Fandelver campaign. My character in Eric's Ghost of Saltmarsh is the opposite. Where it's like, listen, all I do is just smash things. I get real sick of the role-playing part, and that's why I started to kick down doors this week. But I'm like, because everyone's like trying to spend all this time like looking through books and things. I'm like, I'm done. I kick down the door. I'm done.
Yeah, a gnome barbarian is an interesting choice.
I also wanted
unique combo.
I wanted the fun of it being like something you don't expect, but like part of the thing is like one of the things I got in that game is it comes with like the Outlander backgrounds. Like, oh, I have an instrument. Like my character doesn't play an instrument. I was really resistant to like that idea, but I was like, oh, maybe I make it so it's something or something he has, maybe it's related to something in his past, and he doesn't play it, but he carries it around for some reason. Maybe if the other players see it at some point, it can start to lead to some sort of character growth and character arc. It hasn't happened yet, but maybe we'll see. The situation hasn't come up where that would naturally happen.
Yeah, and that's another thing, and that's something I think. Remember, you were looking at backgrounds, and you were a little bit hesitant about some of the background aspects, and I was like, you can, almost like, the backgrounds give you stuff, so use them with with 5th edition, but you can really minimize some of the flaws or minimize some of the elements that you don't feel like you have to be wedded to any of that stuff too.
Yeah,
they're all an idea. They say
Yeah.
that in the book. Like, this is a base idea, and if you want to change it in any way, shape, or form, do so.
But I know one of the things that, like, so if you're in our group and you're listening to this podcast, I guess I'm going to give away a little secret about my character a little bit. Most people assume barbarians don't read. My character can read. He just doesn't care. Like, well, because we found a bunch of books, and like he doesn't care about the like going through them when we were like setting up camp last time. Like, they're not interesting to him.
My druid can't read.
Yeah, that's been fun.
That's because he's a turtle. So.
Your druid also has no concept of money, which has been fun too.
Yeah, he pays with rocks.
Yeah.
We had a character once that I played and specifically couldn't read. And I took the poor feature and everything. Like, I grew up poor, didn't have an education. But because I was so charismatic, everyone just assumed I was higher born than I was because I learned to fake it. It was part of my backstory. Everyone kept giving me things to read, and they'd be like, oh, what's that say? And I would just make up random stuff every time. That's why I couldn't read. But they all trusted me because, like, no one bothered to look over. They went, oh, of course that's what it says. I would make up wanted posters, like all sorts of things. And then finally one person's like, that's a weird thing to be in that book. Can I look at it? Oh, yeah, of course. That's not what it says at all. And I'm like, well, I can't read. Why would you give it to me?
40 sessions in. Wait, what?
I was about to say, this is kind of a good
early on.
This is kind of a good piece of writing advice in general, but you can use this both a player and a DM. It's important for your characters to A, know what they would do, but I would say it's probably more important to know what they won't do. Because if your character, like my bard character, like I don't want to say won't kill anyone because I'm sure we did at some point, but like he's not an assassin. Because I know there was another rogue in our group that was more that way. And I kind of had a plan in place to maybe help. Because I also don't want to bring too much heat on our group because my character's kind of a criminal in certain spots. But I'm not going to give it away in case she decides to play with us again. But I talked with our DM, Shannon here, and came up with kind of a solution to maybe make her tone down like her overly overt rogueness. But like, again, it's important to know what your character is going to. My character, I know I just talked about how he died, which, to be fair, he was kind of against going and fighting a dragon.
It's very true.
To begin with, no matter, even though it was like a little one. If it comes down to it, he's going to save his own skin.
Well, we have in Tim's one game, his Dungeon in a Box one of our players specifically chose that his background is that he is like a 15 or 16-year-old kid who looks older, has grown his facial hair out. He's a prodigy. He's incredibly smart. He took Mastermind.
He lied to get into the caravan to protect the caravan because he's only 16.
But like he's done everything. The first time our caravan killed a human and he was part of it, he looked over at Tim and he goes, my character goes behind the caravan and starts vomiting violently.
Yeah. So I had to be like, all right, roll a constitution check. Let's see how your character reacts to this idea. Yeah.
But like, we didn't know at first until 3 more human bandits that he's killed over the time. He does it every time. We've been playing for a while. He still gets sick when he has to kill humans. Or when he kills someone with
humanoids. Yeah.
Because he's a kid. He's a 15-year-old kid from a farm who ran away from home.
The drow are just trying to kill him, and he knocked them unconscious because he didn't want to. So.
Yeah. So, like, that's one of his major things that he's like, I am not killing anything with humanity unless I have to protect myself. And then now it's to protect all of us. But, like, that's one of those things that, like, he will subdue. He's the only character I think I've ever played with that consistently remembers to tell people to subdue them. Whereas most people are like, oh, I didn't want to kill him. I want to ask him a question. Like,
Dual fireball. I forgot to tell you.
Yeah, I was about to say this. Shannon probably knows it because as I wasn't doing secret rolls or anything. But in Phandalin is pretty poor. It's like I haven't been stealing from like the people that live there. Yeah. You know, like 'cause that's, you know, I understand, you know, the working man and people are trying to. Plus, there's a selfish aspect to it too, where the town's on the grow, and you know maybe it becomes more prosperous, and then you know that's better for me to do things, and I know people in power now.
Those little touches really, they help you get into that character and feel attached to it. So it matters when you succeed or you fail. It matters when your character dies. It matters if your character dies. It pulls you into that story all the more.
Yeah, it helps. It helps really facilitate role playing. Like it's really easy to kind of start slipping to like what your character's decisions would be, and they could be different from your own. I think it's fun. This just comes down to personal preference. I think it's fun to play against, you know, your normal type a little bit every once in a while. Like, granted, I don't personally. I really don't like playing evil characters or especially evil campaigns because they usually just kind of devolve into just murdering everyone. But like,
it's very
I could play an evil, like a lawful evil character, or I could play a character that's like evil, but like I could do it a little bit more like Lex Luthor-ish. But they're not just like a monster, but like they're very selfish.
My only dab into that was chaotic neutral for my punch man. I forget what his name even was, but he was probably my favorite character because he would use no weapon.
Punch and grapple.
He would just run up, grapple people, push them to the ground, and just punch them. And that was it. That was his whole job during a fight, was to tank, push things to the ground, and punch them.
I don't think chaotic neutral counts as evil.
No, that doesn't. Like I'm playing my rogue character's chaotic neutral, but that's just because he kind of looks out for himself, and that just kind of plays more into that.
But that's the closest I've been to playing an evil character, because it can be really difficult running with a whole bunch of people. One of them's almost guaranteed to be at least neutral good, if not lawful good, and you guys are going to have a problem.
Yeah, I think that's usually something that has to be really said at the beginning of the campaign. That's a 0 session thing that the DM sets down. Like, you can be any, you know, no evil alignments.
It's like playing Star Wars, all Jedi or no Jedi. You know? But I will say, I think it could be fun to be a secret evil character where you're more of like a mastermind manipulator type. But that's something you have to work out with your DM ahead of time.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something that could be a great overarching
Like
story
you
arc.
play the hero, but you're really not, you know? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like being a secret bad guy could be fun to play.
Some of the mistakes that people make when they create an evil character is evil sticks out in their mind more than anything else. So they play it almost like I have to be malicious and violent or something of that nature. You don't necessarily have to.
It's
You
really
can
closer
be-
to bad.
Yeah, lawful evil, you still have people you love. You still have people you care about. There are things that matter. You might even have a code of ethics, but you are still selfish by nature. You are still willing to fit within the confines of the law, but you are definitely willing to manipulate them to your own end. You might love the people in your party for one reason or another. Maybe one of the other party members is a cousin that saved your life. You were drowning in a lake and they saved you. So you have an instant bond. Your cousin doesn't think you're evil, even though you theoretically are. It's a very challenging role. I don't recommend it necessarily for a brand new player, but if you have an experienced group, you can really do it well.
Yeah.
And I think I think starting as an evil character might be neat to do, because also you can maybe, I just watched Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time, but she's like, Zuko in the beginning, you could say is probably more evil, but he has a character arc as he goes, and you can kind of have like a redeemed character by the end of the campaign.
Redemption.
Yeah.
And that would be fun to do too.
Yeah, I like the tie-in idea, because that's actually, it gives people buy-in. Because if you see somebody just outright like, all right, I'm going to stab this guy, and you're at least neutral good or higher, you're not going to be like, I'm going to hang out with this dude.
Well, most
But
people
if you're like,
aren't
he protected my nephew, I'm going to roll with him no matter what.
Right.
Most people aren't psychopaths. There's a lot of people in the world that are bad and evil. Not many are actually full-on, like, emotionally disturbed psychopaths.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So, like, they're not your normal player that you're playing with. You can be evil and not have to be like, I am just going to skin everyone alive, wear their skin, and everyone I come in contact to, I'm going to be horrible to. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've played evil campaigns. It's my least favorite thing to do. I do like a session. Like, it's like, again, in high school, we were teenagers and whatnot. It's like, let's do an evil campaign. And it just comes down to like,
I'm 16 and edgy.
We just murder everything we see. And like, it's not fun. And it's just like, just move on and do something else. But like, there's always someone that wants to want, at least when you're young, someone always wants to be evil.
Right.
And an interesting twist might be maybe you are the monsters. In the book, and they're written on paper, certain monsters are neutral evil, lawful evil, or something. But you've been sitting there being evil, but minding your own business. And then these adventurers come rolling in, and you are the monsters, and they're invading your home. Mm-hmm. That's very different. And you could switch it around if you want to try something like that.
Yeah, that was like the Goblin campaign I was describing before, where now it's exactly the table's turn. You're the Goblin village that was invaded by the humans, and now you're the poor refugees trying to reestablish your civilization and survive. Cool. I think there was also something with alignments. I think people get too wedded to alignments or to spend too much time parsing what alignments do. I think they're a good guide, but I don't really reprimand players, or even as a player myself try to adhere to alignment. I try to think personality, ethos, and let that be my guide more than alignment. It's
a tool to help shape your character, in your mind initially. But unless you're like playing a character who's very strictly like rigid, like a paladin, like there's areas of gray. And again, it also depends on your DM and your players and stuff. Yeah. Because if you're playing with like a group that like is super into that, you should respect that.
We've had characters that we have told them, like, I don't know if it's maybe Jim in the one campaign, where we've had characters where people are like, no, I'm a good character. And then they walk into a town and do horrible things. And like, we've had conversations where like, please go on your sheet and change your character's alignment.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean I have to change it? you're not a good person.
You set that place on fire. So
That shopkeeper was just trying to sell you things. Just because he didn't sell it to you for 8 gold.
I say, like, right now, even when I play neutral characters, right now I'm playing 2 neutral characters. I still play them generally good, too, just because, like, I'm not playing, like, horrible. I'm playing, like, more regular people. And, like, not necessarily that they would, if they see a crime, they might step in and stop it. But they're not going to, like, murder people and, like, or, you know, like, lose
you do
a game
what's best for you.
table. Yeah, like,
yeah. Which is neutral. You do what's best for you.
Yeah.
You don't do the best thing. You don't do the worst thing. You're just like,
And
I
then,
feel
you know,
every character is neutral, and we conform to the group.
Yeah.
And the group as a whole is neutral, and we do good things, we do bad things, we do smart things and dumb things, and it doesn't matter what anyone seems to write down. The group as a whole ends up being like, eh.
I mean, sometimes
I think that describes most groups in the end. Like groups kind of develop their own ethos and their own little society. And,
I mean,
you could have variance in alignment, but basically everyone's kind of acting with the same perspective, more or less.
You grow together. Yeah.
Yeah, the best stories have characters. The characters affect each other, just not just in D&D, but just, you know, in stories. Period.
Yep.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Character arcs are like the most exciting thing in you know, in literature and movies and stuff. It's the reason you care when, like, you know, Luke Skywalker saves the day, you know, because you saw him grow.
Exactly. He was that snotty farmer brat in the beginning, and you know he found himself. Good job, Luke.
Has there been any game you guys have wanted to play or run that you haven't yet?
Yeah.
Because I definitely know I really want to play Monster of the Week, or I want to run Monster of the Week, but I just haven't had a chance to play that yet.
I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds interesting.
I have a few. I mean, there's a Star Wars one-shot made by the same person who did Crash Bandas, where you just describe what you did and then roll the dice to see if it succeeds or fails. And you roll the dice against each other, and it's a fascinating concept of you describing this epic Jedi battle, and the dice decide the fate of if it succeeds or it fails.
So the dice are like the will of the Force. Monster of the Week's a little bit like that, where it's the DM or the person running the game kind of sets up the scenarios, but they can't like do any kind of acting until basically they only react to what the players do, and depending on the players die, like it's on a scale of like their rolls, or like you can either take, if you roll real low, you get a really bad outcome happens, a mixed thing happens, or the person succeeds in what they want to do. But it's I think that'd be really fun to DM. And just kind of set up these potentially really dangerous scenarios, because that's a really, really low power game.
Yeah.
Like anyone can die at any moment. Kind of because it's a horror game, but I think it's a fun way of doing it. Because I like to give players a lot of agency, because that to me then is fun as a DM to see what people do.
Yeah.
Because if people just fall into what I want them to do, that's not fun.
Yeah. My other two, I'm going to show my inexperience, because I have played very little besides D&D, was I want to try Pathfinder 2.0, and I want to try the new version of Vampire they just released, because I've never played either version of either of them, and they've always interested me. So
I haven't played them. Well, I haven't played the new versions, obviously. I played Vampire a million years ago, but I'd be willing to play them if you guys need players.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can afford to invest in that many more things.
Yeah.
Wolf puts out so many things.
Yeah.
I have 3 currently that are all more psychological horror-based stories. And I really want to DM them because I am terrified of scary things, so I can't play it. So I need to know what could happen, or I will have nightmares. But like, I've got some crazy ones that I've found that, like, one of them I already bought. But like, we have a couple of them that I've been like, all right.
What's the system?
Well, the one is called Fear Itself, and it's pretty much set up very D&D-esque. But in the book, there's 4 different story scenarios. And it's like your basic tropes. You all wake up in a lab. in these outfits and have to figure out what's going on.
Nice. I like that.
Stuff like that. But like, they're super simple. They're meant to be like no more than 3 sessions.
X-Files kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. That sounds fun.
And then I had another one that we got that it's all set up for you, and everyone wakes up as the humans on the ship. We fought with AI. The computers won, but they realized that they need someone to fix them physically. So humans have become the wrenches and the mechanical work of society.
Mhm.
And you wake up on a spaceship and it's just blaring sirens and it's wrenches, wake up, we need you to fix the ship. And the whole thing is done like Event Horizon style. So I look forward to running them because I don't think I could handle playing them.
They sound cool.
Yeah, I would give them a shot.
Yeah.
So those are like my 2 next ones that, like, I have a bunch of like quick little short things on my list, but those are the 2 that I was like kind of chomping at the bit for.
See, I have a bunch of games I haven't even cracked open. I've got Call of Cthulhu. I've got the Mouse Guard one. I have so many.
I've actually, it's funny. I've always wanted to play Call of Cthulhu since when it first came out with it was a Chaosium games in the 80s, and it was always something I'd see the advertisements for it in Dragon magazine. I'd be like, ooh, look at that. That's really ooh. And I'd even, I think occasionally I'd read some of the supplements and there'd be some reviews in Dragon and things like that. And I've always wanted to play it, and I don't have it, and so I'm curious about that game.
I gotta say,
I hear it's an interesting experience.
I got like a dozen or so of the books because I was at like some con or something. Someone was selling them for like $20. So it's the core stuff and then a bunch of supplements. Cool. I just never cracked them open. It's just that's my big problem as an adult. It's hard to find time. I usually work evenings.
Right now, I have 3 nights a week where I'm playing D&D, so it's kind of hard to find yet a 4th night for a 4th game. It's actually if I go back to after we maybe end social distancing a little bit, I'll have 4 nights. I'll have an in-person night, and I've got 3 fantasy ground nights, and so I would love it, but I need more nights.
Currently working with some of the kids at one of the local high schools in their drama program. A couple of them, my friend, her daughter wants to learn how to play D&D.
Oh, that's so funny you said that. So I've done stuff like that, and been talking about doing stuff like that.
Well, if you want to join, let me know. I'm about to take on a few drama kids that want to learn how to play D&D. So.
Nice.
They're gonna love it. They're gonna
love
they
definitely will.
They're gonna love it.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect group. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll find it. I'm gonna find out I got a whole like a 16-year-old group of like psychopaths. I'm gonna be like, guys, really?
Yeah. I started a gaming club at my high school. I'm a teacher. I teach at Egg Harbor Township High School, and I started this. It's kind of just very informal. You can show up and play Risk or Sorry or play D&D or Magic. And we had right before the quarantine and shut down school, we had 2 regular campaigns going on every Monday during that session. And I was teaching a group of kids how to play, and we were going to have a third. But yeah, COVID-19 ended all that. I had a really good experience teaching game. I did some kind of a Geek Fest, Nerd Con, in Tom's River Library, and I just showed up not knowing what kind of crowd I would get, and I got like about 8 12-year-olds all ready to play, and it was amazing. It's probably one of my best experiences. Just I love the enthusiasm. I love their energy. It was really just amazing. Probably one of my favorite things to do is teach people the game.
I will say if you come across anyone, if you're into this and you come across anyone who's new, especially if someone wants to learn, and this has not been an issue in most cases, but definitely like kind of embrace them and teach them and because when you first play one of these games, your first experience will color whether or not you ever want to do it again. Because I've known a couple of horror stories people have where like their first experience is really bad, And they never kind of went back. They just never bothered getting back into it. And then mentioning that we play these games, I'm like, oh yeah, it's really fun. And like, well, I thought it was supposed to be this way. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you got to find the group that's right for you.
Yeah,
Jim, was there anything?
Think,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll just make one quick point. I think what was interesting about the experiences I had at the school and at the library is that it was like the exact opposite of the classic group of small white boys showing up. And I think there is still that stigma that, it's like there's the kind of the classic nerd image, and it kind of still permeates the game a little bit and shields the game from new players. And I think that these kids were like, okay, it's at school, there's a teacher, we'll bring my friends, it'll be more like open and conducive. So I think that's also something I'd like to try to continue to break down. And I think it's pretty great that I noticed the new generations of gamers are very diverse.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
It's cool you gave them a safe spot, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
I remember when I started playing, I was the only girl I knew.
Yeah.
That played D&D, probably until I was 30.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. Yeah, I mean that sounds right.
No one really played that was a girl, so like most of my friends were guys. So it never occurred to me to look for other girls that played. And now you look online, and it's just amazing. And like Pete, who played Dadlands with you guys, Pete runs a D&D club at his middle school, and
that's awesome. Yeah.
It's almost primarily girls that were showing up, and and he was like, I thought it was going to be all the guys that like would talk to me about video games, and it wasn't. It was all the girls that want to tell stories.
That's the exact experience. Yeah, the exact same. It's amazing.
Yeah. So he was like, he goes, this is so fulfilling. He goes, I'm teaching them something I already love anyway. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and most of us, I think, want to pass on a love for this kind of stuff to anybody.
But no, I think that it's opened up. It's so much more popular now. It's so in the forefront of things. People know what it is.
Yeah, Stranger Things helped with that.
Critical Role was a huge part of that too.
Yep.
When we went to Comic-Con a couple years ago, the Critical Role thing had more people at it than like Jason Momoa got from Aquaman.
Wow.
Like
it was crazy.
It was insane.
I didn't realize Critical Role was that big. The only podcast I listen to about this stuff's The Adventure Zone.
Yeah. Critical Role is huge, and I love the show, so I feel like I'm a biased opinion, but when we went to Comic-Con, I was like, holy crap, there are so many people who are into this now.
And that was 2 years ago, and I hadn't seen Critical Role, and they started lining up, and he's like, oh, I really want to just see what they're going to say. And I was like, oh, is that D&D show you watch? And he was like, yeah. It was insane. Like, on top of Comic-Con, insane for New York.
Wow.
There were so many people there for Critical Role that I was like, I got to see what this is, because how did they get this many totally different people that were there for them? Like, they weren't there for Comic-Con. They were there because Critical Role was there.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I like the fact that the game's gone more mainstream, and that it is attracting, a very different crowd, and it's now, more socially acceptable. I lived through the Satanic Panic.
I was about to bring up Satanic Panic. Dude, that permeated even when I started playing the game. And that was, no offense, but probably like 20 years later.
I was a little goth girl, and that was like my mom's first thing. She's like, "It's you wear all black because of D&D," and I'm like, "Actually, I want to be a vampire."
I would always bring that up.
Different, Mom. Different.
I would always bring that up to people that they're like, "Oh, they worship the devil and stuff." Like, no, we're arguing about math.
Yeah.
And like, it's like the dorkiest thing. Like, all right, that makes it sound kind of bad, but it's kind of like if you break it down to its basest level, just trying to compare it to like heavy metal, like. What people think, like, the Satanic Panic was about. It's like the exact opposite of that. Like, I remember, did you guys ever watch that Newgrounds video where they kind of make fun of that with the Final Fantasy sprite characters? And the one guy's in the other room, like, trying to find Mountain Dew and trying to cast magic missile at the darkness.
Oh, that.
But it's framed like an expose about Dungeons and Dragons through the lens of Satanic Panic. And it's really funny.
That is something. I was kind of lucky because my parents really didn't, freak out too much, even though they were religious growing up, and they bought me, dice and miniatures. My Christmas tree gifts were
That's cool.
all D&D stuff, so they were pretty supportive.
That's really cool.
I remember getting deities and demigods for an Easter present in my Easter basket. And I'm like, this is, looking back on it, I'm like, that's really kind of ironic. At the time, it was like, oh, God, deities and demigods. Guys.
See, even Tom Hanks was against it.
Yeah, at least he got money for Monsters and Mazes. But it was funny as a bookend on that. Fast forward now into probably 2012 or something like that. My grandmother, she was 90 years old. Literally having a conversation with her on her deathbed. She was in hospice, and she asked me, I don't know how it came up, but she asked, or we started talking about D&D. She's like, "You still play that? I used to pray for your soul." Because I was worried that that you were going to start worshiping the devil because of D&D. And I'm like, no, Graham, look, I turned out fine.
I was going to say, you have some kids. All of you have kids but me. Obviously, some of them are a little too young to be playing D&D, but have you found that the next generation kind of is into it? I know Tab plays with you guys sometimes.
She
Tab
did.
used to play. Tab
bit.
played until 6th grade.
Yeah.
And then she realized that she's not like us and had to go full on middle schooler.
Yeah.
So until recently, she realized, she thought we were big nerds and no one would like that. And now that she's graduating, all of her friends think what we do is cool. And now
She's
all of a sudden,
real mad.
yeah. But now all of a sudden she's kind of like, yeah, I can sit down and play a board game with you. And we're like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's, you got to let the kids find their own way. If you try to indoctrinate them too much, they'll rebel.
But it's great for kids, especially like for parents. It's great when they're young. You're sneaking math and language arts skills in there.
It is.
Constantly. You're working on social skills. Like, I'm a speech therapist. Social skills are what most of our kids nowadays are actually lacking in. You're doing it in a natural environment. You're doing it in a way that makes sense. And psychologically, when you get to feel like a hero, your brain doesn't know that you didn't just save that person in the real world. You get all of the different chemicals released and everything for being that hero or for being the horrible person in that. You get to experience these emotions in a safe place that isn't real, and you still get to feel it like it was.
I mean, it's the power of story.
Yes.
And it's just what I think that's what our RPGs do, is take the power of story and give you agency with that story. And there's nothing else really comparable to that. I mean, video games try to aspire to that, but I don't think they can give the full complexity.
There's, even when you choose dialogue, I'm like, I would never say that. That's not even close. What are you doing? So this is definitely a guided story.
That's just kind of the limitations of that medium, though, because they have to program. You can only account for so many variables. Yeah. Whereas this is our imagination and our language skills. Like,
of course,
whatever you want to have happen, you can make happen.
Which is great.
It's a huge benefit, yeah.
Which is great with kids.
Yeah.
Because, like, I find that our generation, we get trapped into the stories we love, the characters we think of, the way reality works, things like that. Whereas you take a bunch of kids and you just tell them, you're going to roll this dice. You don't need to know the rules. Tell me what you do. They don't have a box that they're in. So the more you expose them to this, the more they realize that they can think of anything.
Yeah.
Like, we find our box that we put ourselves in as we grow.
There was a fun story that I read somewhere. A dad was doing a session for his daughters, and I don't remember the exact details of what happened, but basically wolves were attacking a village. So what the kids do, the kids tamed the wolves, and now they have a wolf army. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, we got to protect the villagers from the wolves. It didn't occur to me in my head, why don't you befriend the wolves, and now you have a giant wolf army to protect the village? It didn't happen in my head. Like, that's serious.
Greg Tito from Dragon Talk, the D&D Beyond podcast. That's literally one of his stories.
Yes,
Is that him?
it was his kids.
That's where
Yeah.
okay.
His
Yeah.
father, where he
Genius.
goes, I want to give it meat and love it. And he's like, okay, roll. And she's like, natural 20. And he's like, you have a wolf. She was like 5.
Well, and then you're also teaching, lessons about domestication and stuff in there too.
Well, that and violence not being the only way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's super important. I kind of want to play a very non-violent campaign.
Greg's friend John, who lives in Pennsylvania now. John just started DMing a year ago, and he expected, he was prepared for this battle, this battle, this battle. He went with every basic trope, it seemed like, and he said that the group of adults he had are like social workers and things like that, and teachers. None of them want to kill anything. So they have not actually fought a single thing. They have role-played their way out of every situation. They have made more friends than you would have ever thought. He goes, I keep making these things thinking they're going to fight everything. They haven't fought anything. They've been playing for like a year now. And he loves it.
He asked me for suggestions, and I was like, make sure to try and work something into the role-playing side. Like, have a reason to talk to people or have them have a reason to talk to you, because a lot of people will just ignore that. And he was like, no, they don't fight anything. I don't know what to do. Like, well, I can't help you there. I've never experienced that.
I mean, what you could do is have there be a scenario where, like, the only way to solve the problem, or to at least not make things worse, is they have to kill something.
And he has had that happen. But
yeah.
like,
That's
even
also.
I think one time they were willing to sacrifice themselves. They're like, I guess we make new characters.
But that's another thing. Where, you can get into some really deep ethical, kind of debates and things.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I've had characters who's, for lack of a better term, not I've had characters, but I played with characters, for lack of a better term, are racist against orcs, and I'm like, that's not necessarily true, and we kind of go back and forth on stuff.
I've had an interesting take once or twice where, I've run a campaign where, you have to talk to your players first and find out how comfortable they are, and if they have something that would really bother them or trigger them. Make sure to do that first, but one of the worlds is very, very discriminatory towards lesser races. So anyone that is not dwarf, elf, or human is looked down upon. And it's very, very hard to role play. And it's very, very uncomfortable some of the time.
It is uncomfortable to play that level of racism when you don't believe in it, in your own life. It can be hard. Like I play an orc character who doesn't necessarily, or half orc, who doesn't like elves. Not violently, but it's that casual racism that is that permeates society. It's not like he hates them. It's just that he grew up with that. So now he's slowly starting to break out of the mold, but he still has that minor bit in him the way it is. And it's hard to play because I don't want to play it that way, but I was like, well, this is where the character went. So if I'm an actor and I'm playing a role, you take the role, but because I have improvisation, I can slowly do the redemption arc like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's very neat to see the growth.
Yeah.
Or see the players overcome that adversity.
Yeah.
It makes it worth it to try and fight through that idea, to see them kind of succeed and know that they're doing the right thing. It's an easy fight to win, I guess. When you set it up properly, and it's a good angle to play.
Whereas
Albeit difficult.
I've played in games where someone had a good reason why they were like, elves killed my family.
Yeah.
I hate elves.
Yeah.
I don't care. I hate elves. And they were going for the redemption thing. But every now and then they'd say things, and out of character, I'd have to send a text message across the table, and I'd be like, I'm not comfortable with this. I will stop playing.
Yeah.
Because for me, I can't handle it.
It's important.
And
it's important to have that conversation.
My natural trigger is, I'm about to yell at you. So like I have to say, like, I understand your character part, but we need to come up with a way that we can both play this game and have fun and enjoy it without either of us feeling triggered.
Yeah, it's
if
important.
so-
Yeah, sorry.
Mhm.
So it's
No,
important-
go ahead.
Yeah, it's important for communication in every aspect of everything you do is super important, and I highly encourage everyone to be as open as you can. But it's super important to like respect other players at the table too, because like unfortunately we all have well, maybe not we all do. You guys might not have too many of them, but like some of the people that played D&D in older, in a different time period, let's say, there would always be someone at the table, like especially if there was a girl whose character would always be hitting on them, and they're like, you need to stop, and like they won't, and like it makes everything uncomfortable and it ruins everything for everybody, and you basically get booted out of the game because of that kind of stuff.
I am very, very lucky to have never experienced something like that in any of my games.
I was
and I feel
figuring
like
it was mostly you that
Yeah.
didn't do it, or didn't experience that. Yeah.
Playing in high school, Jim and I played in high school together, and we would have, because again, I was the only girl, where friends that I would sleep over their houses, like we were all good friends. We'd start playing and they'd be like, your character should sleep with mine. I'd be like you would never say that to me tomorrow in gym class. But they would say those things because we were 16 and young and stupid.
Yeah.
And things were a different time period. But like immediately would be like, oh, your character's female? Oh, so I'm going to hit on you. I played male characters for years so that I wouldn't be the female character. I just happened to be the female player.
And that's to say, don't have flirtatious or sexually proactive characters in your campaigns. It's just respect the other player. If they're clearly not reciprocating, just back off.
Yeah.
But that's
Flirt
like,
with the DM.
Yeah.
Flirt with the DM.
The
That was always
DM
fun.
would love it because then they get to play with their characters that they're playing as too.
but like Eric said, those are session 0 conversations.
Yeah.
Yes, very
Like-
much so.
Some people, like in our group, some characters want to flirt with other ones because we've been playing for 10 years together and it's just funny, we're all friends.
Right.
But like you still have that conversation session 0 when you're starting a new campaign.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of pitfalls you can fall into with the game: race, gender.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, as I mentioned before, that's kind of been often barriers for new people to enter the game.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, really, I think, and it's happened organically, that the game those barriers have been breaking down, and it's been great for the game.
There's a great idea that I've seen in a couple of the LGBTQ groups that also role play that I'm in. And one of them said that when they start a game, when there's players, even if they've been friends forever, just for them, every single person has like a chip that's green or red or something that they have as their safe token. And if at any time your character's not comfortable or you're not comfortable, you move the token forward, no questions asked, we move on. Because like some things, like now that we're more sensitive about trigger warnings, like you could walk into a scene where you opened up the door to a random dungeon and there's a body on the floor and it's dismembered. And you don't know that one person, maybe when they were 7 years old, walked in when their parents were watching some movie, saw a dismembered person and were horrified. With the way that rape and sexual assault happens, like someone says something in a tavern or someone says like, oh, and then he grabs the barmaid's butt. Well, maybe that girl worked as a bartender or that guy worked as a barkeep somewhere and someone assaulted them. And just that concept, they didn't know it was going to bother them until that moment. So they can just slide something forward and be like, pressing on, love, and we're done. And you move on and you can have a safe place without having to be like, guys, I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
It's okay to retcon too. We even actually had that before we did one session. I'm like, guys, I don't necessarily know everyone's back history. If we start delving into something that you feel uncomfortable with, just sort of like tap your nose or let me know, and we'll literally just roll it back like it never even happened and move on.
the Heroes campaign, because we were all ourselves in the campaign, and you were like, if this gets too serious at any point in time, put your hand up, we'll roll back and be done. Yeah.
I chose not to have our daughter in that because we all played as
Just in
ourselves.
case.
Yeah.
We were all ourselves with superhero powers.
And I asked, I made sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jim said before it started, he was like, do you want to have Tab in this? And I'm like, nope, because if anything goes after my daughter, I can't handle that. I don't role play personally to be myself.
Yeah.
So it was already something weird for me.
Yeah,
But
that's what we kind of stopped it anyway. So I'm like, you know what, this isn't quite working out. So we ended up moving on. I think we did Star Wars. Is that what we did?
Star Wars was next.
Yeah.
But like, you don't know until you try and play. And if you get with a group of people that are safe, you can have those experiences in such a wonderful, organic way.
Yeah. It's a good way to experience them in a safe spot too, to work through them if you can.
Yeah, and sometimes it's fun to play against a type that you may not. Maybe you play as a different gender than you identify as, a different sexuality you identify as.
Yeah.
One of the things that helped me realize I was always asexual is I realized I was like, oh, my character's never hit on anybody ever. Oh, I get that. And like once it was one of the many pieces that started fitting into place when I start looking back. If you want to listen to a little bit about that, listen to the last episode of the podcast, episode 3. But so this is probably our longest one by a mile. This has been a very good. No. This has been a great conversation. But it is we are coming up on 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it is getting late.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, so it is getting late here, and I'm starting to run out of steam a little bit.
So this is a 2-part episode.
Yeah, so we'll probably start wrapping this up a little bit.
There
If
you
anyone
go.
has any final thoughts they want to get down, now's the time.
Yeah, if you haven't played yet and you want to, just remember the entire thing is to have a good time. Remember, if you get together and you're playing a board game, for the most part, I'm not saying always, for the most part, generally you don't start screaming at each other and, flipping tables and stuff like that. So just have fun, and if something doesn't work, fix it, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good basic advice. Yeah. And it's actually to that point, the object of the game is to have fun. There is no winner or loser in Dungeons and Dragons. There's no even when you die, if you had fun, you still win.
Yep.
And sometimes dying is a really cool part of the game. You might have
can
a-
be.
Sometimes failure is just as cool, man. Or just as
It's just as interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes more so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any social media presence they would like to put on blast here and let everyone know about where they can follow you. Now's the chance. I think, Jim, you're the only one that has one that they'd like to share.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Jimmy Yamaguchi, basically, on Twitter. I'm also on voices.com. So if you ever need something done, just look me up there.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to thank all of my guests here for joining us. This has been an amazing conversation. That's a reason it went as long as it did. And if you have a topic you'd like to see us tackle in a future episode, please leave a comment or contact us at contact@levelupentertainment.com. Our next topic is going to be theme parks. We're going to talk about some of our favorite rides and experiences at various parks around the country. But until then, be safe out there.